Well, I hope you all had a nice lunch. For the 200 or 300 of you that are at home, this is a fireside chat with celebrated digital artist and filmmaker Baff Akoto. Get a cup of tea, it'll be like a warm bath. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Baff, for joining us. I'm honoured to be able to welcome you. And Baff has made an extraordinary transition from documentary and drama director and television to digital artist and filmmaker, exploring the potential of immersive installation, VR and AR. And his AR project Uprise, which you can scan the QR code for if you're in Belfast on the left there as you go out, is currently touring across the UK, and his work's been exhibited at the ICA in London and the BFI as part of their experimenter strand for works by artists that revolutionise and reshape our vision of moving image. No pressure there, Baff, to live up to. Yeah. He's also produced his first feature, Queen of Glory, which premiered at Tribeca and at the London Film Festival. And his conceptual work explores themes of identity, self-perception, and the societal implications of bodily movement through disability, ritual and dance. Now, Baff, last time I saw you, we were both in telly. I was running creative diversity at Channel 4. Yep. You're a filmmaker. I think you brought me a fascinating Black American writer. And I remember I had to say, I think that kind of thing's just not on our shopping list. Have you found, I mean, you've made the most extraordinary transition. Have you found more creative freedom in this space? How different is it to your previous career? I mean, some people would have stopped at that. You know, you were directing drama and documentaries. How's it happened?
The form of TV is really prescriptive, as you know. So I love telly. I love cinema more. And I think digging into the nuances of what the difference is between them and what the limitations are of TV, it just meant that after doing my sort of, 5-6 years of directing teledrama, I needed something different. And that was also helped by, the glass ceilings that are evident in teledrama and every industry really. But yeah, the way I look at it now, I think it's quite interesting that if you're not making the headway you want in a particular area, you kind of go through the back door, the side window, or whatever.
So when you say you were helped, you mean you were helped out of that sector into another one by the glass ceiling?
Yeah, I think
I like that as an interesting sort of positive trajectory.
I definitely think also I didn't go to film school, I didn't go to art school either, so I studied engineering, so I've always had a proclivity for tech. And it was really evident that stuff was happening that had nothing to do with linear TV, and not dissimilar to you. I was just gagging to get my hands on it.
Oh, have we escaped? Yeah. Don't leave me hanging. Let's talk about Uprise. This is really a groundbreaking nationwide AR public artwork made in response to the civil unrest and shown since August this year in communities where those incidents took place back in 2011. Yeah. And you have harnessed the voices of those close to events at the time. It very much draws, I think, on your documentary practice and explores how those digital networks connected marginalised people and manifested in the real world. I mean, tell me a bit about how the project came to be and your process in making it.
Yeah, I mean, Nosa was talking previously in the other session about, you got to kind of look at the form and the medium you're considering and try and figure out if it's appropriate for any given project. And I'd done some virtual reality bits through a Google grant, VR Creator Lab a few years prior, and that had exhibited. And that was, it was cool. It was my first sort of toe dip into this. But the problem I saw was, what Chaz and Nosa were talking about. Accessibility is not the best with VR and headsets and all of that. So as cool as it was, and I was really pleased with that project, and I'll probably continue different iterations of it, augmented reality just felt like the right thing for this project, particularly because conceptually it was very concerned with modernity and sort of the dawn of our kind of current, just massively exponential, headlong dash into a digital future. And I think looking at 2011 and the riots that happened, kicked off in Tottenham and, spread all over the country in record time. Nothing had ever been seen like that before. You can't really dig into that without understanding and acknowledging the technical kind of infrastructure changes that happened in 2011 to kind of allow real world consequence and people to kind of find each other in a way that just has never been possible before.
So this is a digital conceptual work which is really talking about, the digital drivers for protest.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Big part of it, yeah. So augmented reality allowed us to kind of ape the parallel of 10 years ago, where a different emergent technology, i.e., social media encrypted messaging, enfranchised not even audiences, just people, regular folks to kind of air grievances and frankly run rings around the state and all the agencies of the state. And it wasn't, the uprising is very much about what happened in Britain, but 2011 was the Arab Spring. The same sort of factors were converging all over the world to create these flashpoints and these moments, whether it's Tunisia or Tottenham. It's all part of the same moment. So Uprise was kind of it was continuing that traditional kind of art history practice of social unrest and societal kind of happenings being enshrined in art. Whether you're talking about Guernica with Picasso or the Benin bronzes, which were all about the documenting what was happening in those societies in Nigeria at the time, in medieval times, pre-colonial times. Art and artists' materials has always been used to kind of enshrine these moments. And I think, following on from your previous question about leaving linear TV to kind of pursue this sort of work, yeah, I think linear telly it's not advertising, but there is a client, it's a broadcaster, and they've got schedules and, demographics to hit, so.
But do you think you bring to your artistic work a sense of the audience that you're speaking to? Does that television experience translate into that? Because how are you imagining the audience for Uprise? It's gone out in those cities where the unrest happened.
Yeah, the short answer to that question is no.
You weren't thinking about the audience.
No,
just
not
thinking
really.
About yourself.
Yeah, it's free therapy. No, but I still maintain a very commercial cinema practice as a producer and director, linear storytelling, where it's all about audience. Coming from TV, narrative has been my North Star for such a long time. Coming from documentary before that, so it's really interesting to kind of, in my artistic practice, whether it's immersive tech or moving image or interpretive dance and movement, all of that stuff I have license to just think a little bit less about. You still do think about audience, but I guess I'm thinking a lot less about narrative and a lot more about texture, atmosphere, theme, and bringing those to the fore in a way that for a long time I wasn't able to.
And so I'm interested in this, what's the role in your mind of the immersive artist, immersive digital artist today? Is there always like a social purpose you feel you need to bring to it that lends itself to these technologies and particular sort of resonance with place?
I'm not sure.
Do you feel obliged to, you've talked to me about having a social practice. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think it was really cool seeing Deepa's video just then, because I've heard about Deepa. We've still not met yet. We'll chat after.
Yeah.
But it was really cool to see how she was talking about the technology, because there's a criticality that you are able to maintain when you are not engaged in serving clients. As much as it was really very cool yesterday listening to the fashion people and all the super commercial stuff, and that's got a place. But I think there's in terms of artistic practice, I think there's not. Well, the artists that I sort of resonate with, everyone has social conscience, and if you want to get to know anybody who has an artistic practice, just look at their work, and if there's no empathy there, it will be in their work.
And, unfortunately, we can't show too much today. It's a shortish session, but I would urge you to go and look at some of Baff's work online, particularly virtual black reality, which is available on YouTube 180, as it was at the time. And, I know you've got other work coming up. I was very moved by a Toni Morrison quote that you used, which says, especially with the black community, you don't always need to hone in on the crisis. It can be about love. It can be about magic. So, do you consider yourself a political or poetic artist, or is there room for both?
Maybe with a small p. I don't know.
Which bits with a small p? Both?
No, in terms of like being a political artist, I don't know. I think, I'm not an academic. I'm not a writer. I'm not an actor. I make art, and I'm interested. I'm very curious in trying to figure out how that can stay relevant in terms of our digital future. Particularly, we've got an opportunity. I think Rob was talking about it, and some of the other people on your previous panel. We've got an opportunity to kind of not repeat the same mistakes of the past when it came to our colonial and our industrial eras in terms of embedding exclusion and, class segmentation at the heart of how we generate wealth as a society, So in that sort of, in the sort of trying to take that opportunity to be in those spaces, in these rooms, actually, working with this tech, talking to these people, I think it's really key. It's really key to kind of build it from the ground up, rather than doing what we're doing now with other industries, where we are retroactively trying to fix stuff that is decades, centuries broken.
So, I'm new to this sector. I just came into a PhD a couple of years ago. I'm sort of observing the rooms I walk into. Generally, they're quite sort of white and male at the business end of this. Do you think there's room, particularly like some things like the cluster programs, do they have a responsibility to grow diverse voices? Where is the opportunity for young people coming into this sector? Obviously, there's it's kind of schizophrenia, isn't there, which is technology is designed to scale up. And sometimes funding programs are designed to make these small, beautiful gems, R&D projects, artistic projects. Where do you go from there? Will you work as a sort of serial artist on individual projects, or is there ambition to scale up, to reach bigger audiences with it?
Yeah, I think there's with Uprise, on the screen at the moment, just the previous image was Outside Fact in Liverpool, and we worked with different partners up and down the country to facilitate real-world conversations and discussions and workshops with multi-generational communities who, in Liverpool, Birmingham, Tottenham. Uprise was also available in Manchester and Bristol, but specifically in Liverpool, Birmingham, Tottenham, we engaged in facilitations that allowed local communities to come in, young people, their parents, and discuss what had happened in 2011, their recollections of it. Some of their parents were very cognizant of what happened in the 80s, and there's a real sort of there's a real kind of impetus for us to engender a national conversation around the work, and that public program probably was in some ways was more important than the artwork itself.
Yeah, so like a different version of scale, actually, more about impact and resonance.
Exactly. So, in the service of that, I think there's definitely impetus with us and the team at the Recurring Dreams, my artist studio, to figure out a way to stay connected with those communities and those young people in particular, and plug them into people like you, in a way that might be a bit non-traditional, in a way that might still allow them to be able to be part of this digital revolution that we're all sitting here saying that we're screaming out for talent. So I think, for me, that's a really important part of what I do and what I'm trying to build for the future. The other side of things, you can't make cinema without knowing your spreadsheets and talking to financiers and becoming the ultimate capitalist, right? It's just how it rolls.
So it's not just about being an artist, it's actually being able to manage the business of being an artist.
I think so, yeah. There's no, the mentors I have are all business people and have become business people, whether you're talking about Asif Kapadia, he runs his own production company, whether you talk about John Akomfra.
These are your mentors?
Yeah, these are people
mentors
who are...
to have.
yeah, who've sort of... There's just no... I just think there's no escaping it, really.
Yeah.
If you want to have... Ultimately, if you want to have creative control and commercial control of what you're doing as an artist... I don't think there's any way of avoiding that.
Yeah, so actually that training isn't just in the creative, it isn't just in managing the creative technology, it's about really understanding and owning that trajectory as a creative practitioner.
Yeah, completely.
And do you think that's possible? Like when I've met endless diverse people in TV who felt they could never really control their fate. You're only as good as your last job. Do you think that's different anywhere?
Depends. I mean, if you're a gigging TV director like I was,
it's very difficult.
You're not controlling anything.
But you feel you have more control as an artist in this digital space, creative as well as kind of, what comes next?
Yeah, I mean, I'll look at it the other way around, and I will make more TV one day. Not right now, but I will. And when I do, it's going to look very similar in process and commercially to how I make cinema, how I make moving image art, immersive tech art. I'm very process-driven, so ultimately, that's part of the reason why we set up Recurring Dreams as an artist studio, is to kind of facilitate me and other artists that we're working with, but also, should we find something that we want to scale in that commercial way, we have that infrastructure now.
So let's talk a bit about that. So Recurring Dreams is your production company, essentially, your artist studio, and it's part of the Black Incubator at Somerset House, is that right?
Yeah.
And what are the goals of that Black Incubator, and for you with Recurring Dreams? What do you, if you envisage yourself 10 years in the future, what will Recurring Dreams be doing?
I don't know. We'll be working with everybody in this room as colleagues and friends and funders, and we'll be employing a bunch of these young people that we started interacting with, and I hope to train up and plug into non-traditional training schemes.
Well, I mean, there's a really important question here about accessing this part of the industry now, isn't it? How do emerging creatives of colour, or from working class backgrounds, how do they get into this sector? Right? Probably seems impossible from outside.
Yeah, I mean, a thing that I did, the Google thing was really important for me, I think, and also there are a couple of, I did a thing at the Berlin Film Festival called Berlinale Talents, and there's who's the world building guy who was here this morning? I missed it.
Alex, I've forgotten his name.
That guy, yeah. And he was there, and so was Jessica Brillhart, who was the main VR filmmaker at Google at the time. And most people were off, hanging out with the Game of Thrones cinematographers or listening to Meryl Streep, but I was really, again, the geek that I am, I guess. I was very interested in what they were talking about and what at the time was very new to me. And this was about 5 years ago. In terms of immersive tech and what it was doing at the time. Fast forward 2 years and I got the Google money as part of their VR studio, and making that work was instrumental in allowing me to sort of understand and envisage what it meant to make an immersive piece of work.
And this was virtual black reality?
Yeah. That's what turned into virtual black reality. So beyond that, I think I looked around, I saw some stuff from Story Futures. I spoke to a guy called Rory Clifford, who's based here, who I haven't seen yet. But he was really interesting, and he told me about the cluster. And I was like, that sounds incredible, and it's really cool to kind of get to come and see it. But he was the first person who mentioned people like Alan Hook to me, Declan Kenny, and Paul Moore, Gandalf. So it was just interesting to kind of get the lay of the land. Slowly, it takes years, but I think there's a way for me, there's a way to kind of make sure that as I progress in this direction, I can enfranchise a bit more access for others who might not, necessarily be cognizant of what's available here.
I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people connected to the cluster programs here. Do you think that sort of funding model is useful for artists like you or for people who want to make work of scale? Is it more
I don't know yet.
business folk? You don't know yet.
I've never gotten any money from anyone in this room yet, including you.
Sorry, I don't hand out the dosh.
But again, it's almost, everything I've done in this space has been either Arts Council funded or Google funded, and they're sort of two very ends of an extreme, right? Like super commercial, chucking a bit of money into an R&D project, or super sort of public funding. And I mean, Arts Council are interesting. I don't think they fully understand what this is, but they're interested in finding out more. Yeah,
hopefully the clusters fill the gap between that sort of Arts Council type work.
Yeah. So that's kind of the thing for me now, is to kind of understand what's in between those two ends of super public money and very hands off, and that they're not adding any real value in terms of the Arts Council. They just give it money until it's come back.
Can I do my massive plug here, Baff?
Do your plug.
This is shameless. So Story Futures is actually recruiting 50 emerging creatives. I know there's a lot of practitioners watching, and we have an opportunity that's open now, if you want to look on the Story Futures site, for 50 emerging creatives. That's people with perhaps 3 years or more experience in other bits of the creative industries to step in and make AR, make VR projects for Festival 2022, which was announced as Unboxed today. So I hope we'll be able to send people your way to Recurring Dreams after they've had this year-long experience with us, right? Plug over. But that is a fantastic opportunity.
Cool.
But there aren't many of them, There aren't that many opportunities to really express yourself in this space. I mean, have you found it relatively easy to get funding, or?
No, it's never easy to get funding. You just sort of.
How did you learn? I think there seems to be a particular way to sort of express yourself in these applications to get the dosh.
I don't know. I've got really good mentors, and it's interesting coming from cinema. You talk about projects and concepts and visual language in a different way in the cinema space to get money there than you do in the art space. And it's interesting hearing the language being used in this room, particularly by more commercial practitioners. Again, listening to Deepa on that video, everything she was saying made sense to me. But not everything that was being said yesterday made much sense. But again, that's the learning curve. That's the sort of those are the things that need to be surmounted. But when you move away from criticality and you move into more commercial spaces, I think you kind of got to figure out, again, back to Nos's point, horses for courses. Which funding is the best for the thing you're trying to do.
And I suppose which funders are going to allow you to make it the way you want to tell it.
Yeah, exactly. I was in Sarah Ellis' thing yesterday watching the RSC
Dream,
which was very cool, very, very cool. And it was interesting listening to an actor, I forgot your name, sorry, but you're great. Maggie. Listening to her talk about the technology in a way that I've kind of, I spend a lot of time working with actors and talking to them about busyness and physicality. And I also spend a lot of time talking to immersive world builders and techies. But I've listened to Maggie. It was like, oh, both at the same time. That's something that pricked me up. And I was like, oh, this is cool. This could actually have applications for something else that I'm doing.
So if you didn't get the chance to see it, Maggie was leaping around in her mocap suit and actually just dialing up and dialing down performance. And it was a really fascinating insight into how that creative process translates into technology. I mean, one thing I've noticed about some of the other work I've seen of yours is there is a real physicality to it. I know you think a lot about embodiment and identity. How do you, or why do you explore those themes in these mediums? Why not, I suppose?
Angela, come in with the zingers.
The unanswerable question.
I know, right? I'm really interested in culture and how culture, like cultural formation, what is it that kind of builds culture, outside of any one particular sphere, whether it's, image-based or dance or ritual or religion or the written word. But cultural formation over time is really interesting to me, particularly when you start talking about the formation of diaspora, right? And those things that kind of make up diasporic life and identity and communities often embody themselves in things that are very visual in a way. A lot of unspoken things give you just immediate implication onto where somebody's from or the power dynamics at play when they walk into a room. So all of those things really, I guess, I've found is living rent-free in my head. So I'm very prone to kind of exploring that stuff.
So I guess that your conceptual work allows you to explore those unspoken themes more than sort of TV with its literalness would ever allow you to, even in a long feature documentary. You can say it without saying it.
Yeah. But there's a Irish theatre director, I forget his name. I heard somebody talking about how when they graduated from theatre and started making like cinema, suddenly all the stuff that they were railing against and trying to put into their theatre work was just that had a home elsewhere, in another sort of branch of practice. And I guess that's how I feel about the artwork, whatever the medium, and the linear sort of legacy media stuff that I'm still involved with.
Now, I promise you I'm not just looking at my phone because I'm bored. I'm trying to see if there's any questions because they're not appearing for me. Well, there's a few minutes to go. I'm not sure if these are for us or for the last panel, but Dom Hyde says, very interested to hear your views about the nature of public space art. There was a second half, but Hopin keeps crashing, which is why this is a little bit interruptive. Thanks, Hopin. Do you feel that public space art, is it a good place for digital work? Are the conditions? I mean, obviously you've been working under very difficult conditions the last couple of years. Have you been able to experience that in an optimal way yet, in terms of the way you display your work?
I don't know what's optimal yet in the immersive. I really don't. I think I was very keen to, that poster you're seeing now. That was, I think we had maybe 15,000 posters up and down the country. And what it just allowed us to do was to place the work in physical space and have that digital and built environment conversation in a way that VR just didn't allow. So, for me, it was very much kind of about, a sense of place, that metastasization of rioting that happened in 2011. It was very much kind of about trying to replicate and nod to real world kind of physicality at play, and
so you're almost trying to mimic
life.
Almost trying to mimic the spread of the unrest through the channels that you've where you've placed it. I mean, actually, the second part of that question before it crashed was, how do you see the model is changing, and is that very much about like this kind of public art, bringing it to different spaces?
We were very, very conscious of trying to reimagine what a public art exhibition could be. Yes, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, a massive Iron Angel of the North and, Mr. Gormley, that's iconic. But I think moving forward, it's going to be interesting to kind of understand, well, what is going to be that iconic is it the metaverse, or is it going to be something sort of hybrid before we all go full meta, full contact lens, full Google Glass or whatever. So I think that's a big part of what we were interested in, just how to use the technology to kind of embody the kind of criticality of thought and process that we were interested in, but also just to imagine again in the future, or well, not in the future, now, today, what we could do in terms of taking art outside the white cube and figuring out what public art could or should do.
And I mean, we've got a couple of minutes to go, and I suppose I want to ask you the same question that I ended on for that other panel. You know, do you think yourself into the future and imagine once we get to the full metaverse, what kind of work you'll be making? Do you imagine what kind of work you'll be making in a few years' time?
No, I'm just too busy figuring it out now.
Aren't we all? There is a quick question. The opportunity I mentioned earlier is called Story Trails. Sorry, I forgot. If you look at storyfutures.com, you can see the application form. Sorry, Baff, to hijack your session with that, but
no,
this
cool.
is an opportunity for emerging creatives.
I'm applying for it.
I think you need to run it. That question was asked by James Bennett from the Story Futures cluster. Anyway, thanks. Baff, if you were going to give advice to a creative who doesn't even know where to start now, how would you get started to do what you've done?
If you're listening to this, go to the Beyond speakers list and email everyone who's got money.
You got money?
They're being real quiet right now, but they got it. Yeah.
Well, listen, Baff, we're going to finish on the second. Thank you very much. It's been so inspiring and really nice to reconnect. Next time you come to me for money, when I've got some, I'll give you some.
Yeah, we'll talk.
So everybody, I'm sure you'd like to thank Baff very much. Thanks a lot.